between cities to cities?
No, we're not allowed to either. We can't even go and visit our neighbors.
So basically you start there.
We are stuck. We're allowed to go out for replenishing our food and emergency supplies, and that's it. The poor smokers are not allowed to smoke. The boozers can't booze. I'm just so grateful I've got my own stash.
You better watch it. You're going to run out of stash. Yes.
Oh, trust me, I'm rationing. I'm rationing very seriously. But guys, I think it's 5 past already. I think what we should do is I'm going to start recording before, like yesterday, I forget. And as the others join, we'll just let them fall in with wherever we're at. So the big objective today is to talk to various African convention bureaus. And I think we've got a nice mix of convention bureaus like in training, some that are not quite there yet, but definitely focusing on mice, and then the better established convention bureaus, with Rwanda being quite a new one, and obviously Cape Town Bureau that Rikus started many moons ago. So with that, I'm just going to welcome everybody and to our audience, ladies and gentlemen. This is a pre-recorded session, so we'll be sharing it on our various platforms afterwards. But this conversation will go about the role of convention bureaus in Africa and where we're standing at right now and the potential future of the convention bureaus and mice business. And with that, Mr. Rick Taylor, may I hand over to you to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your history, please?
Sure. Hi, a very good afternoon to you, Tess, and friends around the table. So nice to see you all. Yeah, so Rick Taylor from the Business Tourism Company. We position ourselves as tourism economists, working primarily at the highest levels within economies that cascade generally out of ministries of tourism, and focused especially and specifically in the MICE sector. As we all know, certainly those listening know that the MICE sector represents, in terms of an acronym, the meetings, incentives, conferences, conventions, events, and exhibitions. So that's the arena we specialize over the last, 18 years. If you look at the continent of Africa, we've been privileged to work with Cape Town, and we've set up 6 national convention bureaus on this fabulous continent of ours. And I just see as we look at the proverbial crystal ball, as we head certainly towards 2020, more and more convention bureaus will see, or more and more perhaps governments and ministries will see the economic impact, the strength that lies behind having a convention bureau as part and parcel of the tourism marketing mix. Because basically, I think, as we all appreciate, if you look at a current scenario, a lot of national tourism bureaus have done a great job on the leisure side of the equation, but the MICE sector is, for me, certain. I speak for the team around the table this afternoon. I really do think, arguably, this is the most lucrative sector within the tourism offering, and perhaps that particular asset isn't working hard enough on the continent. So I think a strong convention bureau is absolutely an asset, of course, with the talent, and we've got Corne there in Cape Town, Frank, of course, in Rwanda, and around the globe. You know, we've got players now in Uganda, in Ethiopia, in Kenya, and Tanzania. So there's a powerful muscle, MICE muscle, that is starting to present itself on the continent. So right now, of course, I think in the midst of Corona-19, what I'm sort of calling the MICE twin towers, and maybe we can talk about a test, where do we go to, where does that thread extend itself in coming, do I say weeks or months or quarters? We've been participating in a lot of webinars right across the world. So there are different appetites, there are different takes on various scenarios. So so I think as MICE, the continent is starting to grow. any industry that can attract thousands of people to a destination that arguably were not coming has got to be a potent industry economically, and of course from from a job creation point of view, a poverty alleviation point of view.
Thank you, Rick. And Rick, if I may, I'd like to refer to Rick and Colette and what they're doing. It's kind of the glue between African MICE destinations and convention bureaus. They've certainly been very proactive and successful in setting up these convention bureaus. And if I may refer to, I see Kenya has joined us. I'm not sure if it's Betty or Jacinta. Can you hear us, Kenya?
Sure, I can. It's Betty.
Betty, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Lovely, lovely. So I'd like to jump across to you, because I know Rick and Colette have been busy right up until the lockdown, working on the Kenya Convention Bureau, which is very recently established. And of course, the onset of COVID-19 has kind of, halted everything in its tracks. So can you give us a bit of insight from, when was it announced? I think it was October or September. And what progress have you made, and what challenges are you facing right now?
All right. So first of all, I'm supposed to be a spectator in this call. I hope that Jacinta will join the call. But I can give some insight in terms of basically just the operations aspect of it, as I sit on that board. So it was announced, and it was announced in October last year at MKT, and then established shortly after. So it's just in the process. It's in its infancy. Rick probably is going to be a key partner in ensuring that we're able to get the Convention Bureau in Nairobi for Kenya to get the rapid traction that it requires. It's in its very early stages. It's hardly 4 months on, and the worst thing that it could probably wish on itself is COVID-19. In fact, I actually joined the call to just get a good sense of the views around the opportunities or the mitigations that destinations could put in place, either during pre-recovery and post-recovery, and the lead times for that. Because when we look on the tourism sector, which is really what I look after, it is a significant impact. And this is, you're talking individuals traveling in small groups and as families or FITs or other forms of much significantly fewer people considering going to a destination. So in the face of COVID and the data that's generally out there, even just evaluating the future of travel, I know UNWTO announced a 20 to 30% decline in tourism in general, but when we look at the impact, even to date, that we are perceiving, taking a 6 to 9 month view, it's looking more like a 50% decline. So it's a significant impact. Just on the tourism industry, let alone the MICE industry. I think MICE will really need to reinvent itself, and there's lots of opportunities around that, because even during this period, there's groups of people and partners that have been able to get people to literally have virtual events that go through a whole day. The other day, 6 hours. Successfully with very interesting and engaging discussions. So it will be interesting to see or hear views around what you all who are experts in the convention business, what you all think would probably be the pre-recovery period and the timeline around that, and what the opportunities for recovery would be and the lead times around that. Tess, we don't hear you. You're not unmuted.
Ah, Thank you. Thank you. I just had some dustbin noise outside. I had to lock that out quickly. But Betty, yeah, staggering 50%. And you know, in the early stages of your Convention Bureau developing, I'd like to come back to that in terms of how can one combat that into the future. But Corne, let's first hear from probably the most established Convention Bureau in Africa. What is your take on the situation as it is?
Thanks, thanks, Jason. Good afternoon again to everybody, and hello, Betty. We've not met in person. I think there's, you know, yesterday was, I think we're all going dips, and I think the reality is right now is that there are obviously a lot of decisions that needs to be taken short term towards a strategic approach, and then the longer term. And the shorter term for a CVB and what's happening on the CVB side is that what support and how do you support the immediate business setup of the sector that you service, and this narrative that Rick's pushing in terms of the value of business event is I see it's going to go stronger and stronger. But the big role of Convention Bureau now, to me, is that strategic approach about value of meetings, how will it look, and what can it do to economies, is now going to move on to a kind of another kind of impact where you've got not only, because maybe we can't measure economic impact any longer about just the normal 3-day event, 500 people setup, the conversion of what it really can do for destinations and this whole thing about building knowledge, learning, applying that into a business sector and the legacy of it, is the long-term vision of it. But there are really short-term decisions that needs to be taken. And through the past few weeks as webinars, and Rick, you're the first one driving such a thing, is about how do we as bureaus lead on our strategy and build a strategy for the destination, because this is the time that we all are going to collaborate much more. And although in our case, you know, and I think in Africa, our economies are not so strong that you can have a European-based model of how it is to keep business afloat. How it is, our sector, I find always our sector is such a passion sector. We do what we love because we believe in it. And so are event planners, and so are incentive travel, meeting planners, all of that. And you do need to, that's going to go away, and I'm worried about that. I'm worried about people that will have a passion and they can't work. And as a bureau, we need to look into how do we drive, give them the tools, how do we adapt ourselves and our industry to host virtual events? What is the best practice? How do we give them their way of designing events that can actually present a successful virtual event and that the destination wins in it? And that is how I see sort of our role in a long-term vision of going forward, and short-term goals of how do we get our businesses, just help business survive in this 3 months, 6 months period. And then longer term, because we'll have to adapt in terms of the fact that we probably, our meeting sizes are going to become smaller. However, on this continent, I see a brilliant future for us to grow closer together. And there's been so many great thought leadership on it almost last week. Some of you were in that panel from last week, whereby this continent, and we can't model ourselves on Europe or Asia or anything like that, because our challenges are different and we're different kind of cultures. But I think this is the time for this continent to build knowledge, share it more often with each other, learn from each other, because that's how we learned as a bureau in Cape Town, and Rick knows how long it goes back. we had to learn on our own. There wasn't anything else that helped us. And what we've done is we sided with international countries in an alliance that we're still a part of. But the alliance focus has gone from what is best practice in Convention Bureau to how do we service our clients, our association meeting planners, how do we use Bureau and business events to add value to our destination where we're at, and what are our unique challenges in our destination that we need to use a meeting for to highlight a specific sector that we need to be highlighted, agri-processing or tech or what it is.
Okay.
So that's sort of my quick 5-minute take on where I see this is moving.
Cool, that's great. Thank you. Before we carry on, I'd just like to say welcome to Jacinta from Kenya that's just joined us, as well as Kojo from Ghana. So we've got a really nice cross-section between southern, east and western Africa. And Corne, to add on to what you said, because you've already addressed a couple of questions I've had coming up, but being such diverse regions, we have, even though we're one continent, we have different challenges, and some might recover sooner than others. And at the moment, the light point, in my opinion, is East Africa, where we've got the least COVID cases that we know of, and a potential to fire up business in that part of Africa. So Frank, can we go over to you and just give us your take on what's happening, not just in your own country, but in your region, and what potential you see moving into the immediate future?
Thank you, Tess, and good afternoon, all. Very delighted to see you all. I think, Tess, what is happening in the region is really, we felt the impact of COVID-19 to our sector. That is very clear across the entire region. Tourism, as you may know, in East Africa is one of the really drivers for our economic development. And spending 3 months without any guest coming to our destination or any meeting or event in our destination is really, killing really the economy. So we're really feeling the impact. That is the truth. And speaking from our side, in the perspective of Rwanda, MICE has been one of the pillars to our economy. One of the biggest sector in terms of revenue generation to the economy, but also in terms of employment and the attracting investment. I think what we've also seen as a result of really focusing on growing this specific sector is the multiplier effect it also creates to the entire economy. So really that's the impact we're feeling today. And what we're doing and what we hope to see is really to continue really focus. We know for sure this will pass, it's a matter of time. But as the Bureau, and this is what I argue to my fellow neighbors and the other African bureaus or other African countries, that they stay focused. I think that's very important. We stay focused. We say that we know for sure this is going to end, but when it ends, what do we do? As Corne mentioned, I think there's a immediate focus. There's the short term and the mid term and long term. But the short term, what can we do to support our industry? How do we ensure that we bring together our private sector, even if there are small meetings that could start within the country to support the industry, because the industry is apparently closed and nothing is happening. So how do we start with even the small things that can allow us even to support the industry to keep on operating? So I think that is really should be the focus. How do we all come together from government to private sector to ensure that we work together, we drive together, we start with the small we have, and then we grow bigger. In the long term, I think really the focus of generating events within Africa and looking at our key industries is going to be paramount, rather than really looking at events or businesses that are going to come from abroad. I think for me, if we can really take forward this discussion, it is going to help us to quickly recover because South Africa is going to easily trust Rwanda. Rwanda is easily going to understand South Africa, Kenya, and all that. So I think The moment we start working together and creating this platform, it is going to be easier for us really to gain the wins we're losing at the moment.
Thank you, Frank. Indeed, a few good points you're raising there. What I'd like to touch on is something that you've mentioned regarding investment. I guess our ideal landscape would first of all be COVID out the way, whether we find vaccinations or it burns itself out, whichever way it goes. Our lockdowns obviously need to be a thing of the past. Then we need to open our skies, or we need to open our borders, and all of the above could still take months. In the meantime, we as Africa now could potentially develop business amongst each other. We keep talking about intra-African travel, but investment. Can we fund ourselves, or are we going to need external investment? And for those two, Rick, if I might first pick on you, and then Kojo possibly follow on to Rick from that, and then let's hear your thoughts. Over to you, Rick.
Absolutely. So I think if you look at the sector tests across the continent, you've got Cornet, who's got a bureau that's 20 years old. And you've got Frank, that's got a bureau that is 6 years old. And the rest of the continent, as I was saying in my opening comments, are starting to appreciate the undervalued share of the MICE sector. If you looked at the continent as a stock exchange, I think the MICE share would be a terrific financial investment. But with that, as governments start to recognize the ROI on their investment behind this particular sector, I think the financial comment or the conversation that you put on the table will start to percolate. If you look at, and I'm just thinking of Nairobi, of Kenya right now, you've got a fabulous, iconic building in the convention center, but that's going to need investment to really bring it up to, into the 21st century, because you'll know that it was built back in the late 60s, early 70s. So I think with that, we need investors. With that, we need confidence. If you look across the continent as well, if you pop into Ethiopia, there's a lot of product there, there's a lot of investment there that is going to need work. So I really do think that while right now we're in a bit of a sort of a gathering recession, if you will, this, coming back to what Frank was saying earlier, this too shall pass. Holding both thumbs very, very tightly. But so coming back to the future, coming back to the FDI, the foreign direct investment, looking at the hotels, look what is happening in the hotel space with the Radissons, the Marriotts, the new brands, Wanomo, the Park Inns that are going into all these fabulous destinations of ours. So I think really the future does hold merit. If you look at where we are, on my LinkedIn, I've posted a few sort of interesting infographics. Yeah. I believe we're coming out of that fear zone where, people, certainly in South Africa, were running around hoarding toilet paper. What's all this about? But I think the pendulum is starting to swing away from. We're in a stage now where it's kind of okay. We're starting to calm down. Yes, COVID. I think we're looking for that to flatten the curve. I think that's starting to happen. And already across the world, economies are starting to open their doors. Look what's happening in China, for example. Look what's starting to happen in Europe. So going forward, the investment what we do need to do, though, I think as far as Africa is concerned, is get back into the marketplace, present our credentials, and really look at, talking to the meeting buyers, meeting planners, in the association space, in the incentive space, in the corporate space, in the events and exhibition space. So right across the acronym. Because I do believe that with enormous passion, that the purpose of meetings will not change. I hear people about tearing up all their business plans and starting again. I don't think that a lot of these destinations who are going to start tearing up their business plans, they couldn't have been so far wrong. They were on a path. If you look at just January, what was it, 3 short months ago, it was all roses. The year looked good. People were talking about 2020 being fantastic. Now, absolutely, we've had a horrible hiatus. We need to work with this. And, and now I'm sort of stepping a little bit into sort of political territory. It's very much with the heavyweights in the politics who are going to lift the doors. Back to your point, Tess, get those aircraft flying again. No, this little round table here, we don't have the power in that arena. We can certainly advise, and my advice would be, this is not going to take long. We're probably going to look at working in quarters, if you will. So certain quarter 4 this year will, again, listening to some commentators, particularly in the US, there is an appetite there that things will certainly start to bounce back. So I don't, again, being perhaps the eternal optimist, we will be back. We will meet again.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you so much. Kojo, can we redirect to you? I'm sure with your helicopter view across Africa and being very involved in our tourism, especially our business tourism, what are your views with what's going on at the moment? Did we lose Kojo?
Hi, good morning, everybody.
There you are. Good.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. And yes, from Accra also. Thanks for the invitation to join the conversation. I think that Rick said it's hit the nail right on the head. And the bigger challenge is the fact that we've been, again, using the point that we've been exposed when it comes to working together as Africa, both on the convention side, tourism side, political side, okay? Because if you look at the situation right now, we don't even have a coordinated effort within AU structure. So if you go to the point that, assuming that the virus is being contained, at what point in time do countries begin to lift their own or open their borders? Because we are having a situation right now that we are going through a deglobalization stage. Okay, America, the UK, even the European Union are saying that they cannot open to each other. Okay, so if you look at our unique case in Africa, if the political will is not there, like he said, we can advocate, speak about it and talk about it, but it will be difficult to drive that. Let me take you back to the investment you're talking about. If you look at other properties in Africa, the Marriotts, the Radissons, the Onomos and all of that, most of the owners or the investors are Africans, okay? Now, there's a lot of window that they could still invest in things like the convention bureaus on the continent. But if you're not getting, incentives that will allow you to go and invest in Ghana from Kenya or from Rwanda and all of that, people likely would look elsewhere. So the political factor is a key factor. I mean, we can't lose sight of it. Now, if you come to when we will start to do things again, I believe that we work in a global ecosystem, so that if South Africa is fine and Rwanda is not okay, then the point about when do you start working together becomes an issue. And it goes back to my point that we don't have a coordinated, action. It doesn't mean that we should stop advocating, writing, and doing the PR about the fact that we need our government to understand the value of tourism and events. Okay, we live most in West Africa typically. If you have a government event, it's considered as a national event, it's considered as state protocol, it's considered as a security whatever. So you don't have professional PCOs even handling that. So unless government will understand that this is an industry, complete industry, like you have, pharmaceutical or you have engineering or something like that, it will be difficult for us to be able to start from there. And so you have events that when it comes, or when they are bidding for events, they don't even invite, say, the tourism board, the convention bureaus, whatever. And what I think we can do, and this is just my humble opinion, is the fact that we can be able to learn from each other. Like we said last week, West Africa need to learn a lot in what's happening in East Africa or Southern Africa in terms of the bigger tourism space on how to do things, administration and marketing. Okay, and then our people have to understand the value of tourism and mines. Because if you look at Africa's unique case about saying that we are pro-poor, the pro-poor policies can be found in tourism, really. But people don't even think, and sometimes you have to point to decision makers, policy makers about something that they don't even think in its very colloquial term you see as tourism. They don't see it that way. So I think that there's a lot of prospect that we can look forward to it, but we've also come to agree that going forward, obviously, I think things have to change in terms of how we do things. We've seen how we can, digital tools is part of it, but its actual impact on the people, the destination, how we travel, I think we have to look at it, because what has Corona taught us is the fact that everything has stopped completely, but also thinking about how we can be able to ensure that we have some level of shocks, absorber shocks that can hold the bigger problem when we have an external problem like this. So these are my introductory remark about the whole situation.
Thank you, Kojo. I think that phrase you used, shock absorbers, will definitely be key for all of us to support each other as an industry, and we need to figure out what those shock absorbers are going to be. Collaboration is definitely one, but again, money makes the world go round. Where's that going to come from? And Rick, maybe you agree or disagree, in fact, Corner as well. From a South African point of view, once upon a time we were the golden child of Africa, but at the moment we're sitting with the junk status. We've got an airline that's about to proverbially crash and burn. We've got a power supplier that's not that reliable. So all in all, things for South Africa from a political point of view, probably not as rosy. So what stops an East Africa to now rise and shine? Like Kenya's got a new convention bureau, Rwanda's up and running in a fantastic way, Ethiopia's got the biggest and probably best airline on the continent at the moment. So I'm just, hypothetically speaking, could the hub for tourism into Africa potentially shift to East Africa and new things start from there? And then Jacinta, I'm going to pick on you if you'd like to give us your thoughts on that, and then hopefully Rick, I know you're going to pull that one apart for us nicely.
No, but just before Jacinta weighs in, Tess, I think I really enjoy what you've said in terms of where is brand South Africa. So I've got a strong point of view that everybody lives by selling something, and that includes countries, that includes destinations. And if you look at South Africa, where we were, we had the high ground, and just as a result of circumstances, I guess, and do I dare use the word mismanagement, the brand, the destination has softened in terms of its cachet, its appeal. And definitely, I think I see, again, always had the helicopter perspective across this amazing continent of ours, that East Africa, and I've said it before and I will say it again, is the next center of gravity when it comes to mice. So East Africa has got its act together. They've got some great talent, some great people. It's at the beginning of the curve. Rwanda is perhaps at the head of that particular curve. But there are some fabulous results there, some fabulous events in 4, 5, 10 years' time that that East Africa, that region, will magnetize. Watch this space.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rick. Jacinta, would you like to add to that? Oh, we can't hear you though.
Thank you, Tess, for the
There you go.
question, and Rick for the encouraging words about East Africa. Colleagues, very nice to see you. And I'm happy to be part of this discussion. Of course, having had various discussions and listening in also and weighing in on a lot of other conversations that have been going on. Here in Kenya, as you know, we are just setting up the Convention Bureau, and then bang, this happens. For us, we are currently listening in, we are engaging with our trade, we are having a brainstorming sessions because we want to start at a different level. We as a bureau have an opportunity to launch into the market an organization that is going to be different and looking at the situation moving forward with no, no previous baggage of how we did things before. So we have an opportunity now to use this period to research a lot, to learn a lot, to investigate what the future will be, and so that we can entrench our role really clearly, to be able to work in this sector. As you said, we are very optimistic in Kenya and also in the region, I can say. And we're looking at really catching up with the Southern African region and being like a destination or a region that has positioned itself around sustainability. We look at having, to focus on more impactful events, more impactful conferences that reach out to the people, to the host communities, that have impact moving forward, that takes care of nature and the environment. This pandemic is teaching us the real importance of nature, of life, of humanity. So those are areas that we want to focus on. And we have a strength in looking and having ambassadors who can really push our agenda on this. Both our nationals and friends of our nationals who see and who have been able to front this. For instance, looking at what we have done in conservation, what we have done in ecotourism, sustainability, having some key figures that we can work with. The other exciting thing, of course, is that we have to look at investing in the right infrastructure. As you said, Rick and Tess, even up to January, you see the hotels, the business hotels in our key cities coming up, new brands, really vibrant economy. We, of course, want to leverage on this and be able to see where can we adjust our investment in infrastructure, the correct, right infrastructure to be able to deal with the future. If it means that we'll be having more virtual or hybrid events, we need to invest in the right ICT infrastructure to be able to cope with what is going on. The other key thing is what we are looking at in terms of coming up with an incentive for mines, specific for mines, and an incentive that will encourage the businesses to move on. In Kenya, for instance, we've had discussions with our meetings, industry, trade, and for sure we want to look at domestic and regional as one of the first to return. There's going to be need for us to meet and discuss about new topics that are coming up. People will not stop meeting because there's new things to talk about. We need to share experiences. How did you handle COVID? What innovations came up during this period? How are your nurses coping? Even the police, how are they, and be able to share this so that we are prepared for the future. The other very key area that I'm looking at is the incentives, in the mice. There is need now, of course, as we recognize humanity, we recognize our staff, people who are on the front line. They need to be rewarded. They need recognition. What are the corporates and institutions where these people have been working on planning? We have to talk to them and say, hey, there is an opportunity in our country to give these people incentive trips because of what they have been going through. So those are opportunities that I see we can really focus on and be able to spur this, newness and be able to position ourselves properly. Thank you.
Jacinta, thank you so much. That's very proactive and positive, creative even. Rick, did you want to add to what she's saying? I know you head and heels involved in Kenya's CVB development right now.
I agree absolutely with exactly what Jacinta has sketched. It's it's not the end. It's the beginning. We have to do things differently. Maybe be a bit more clever. I like the reference back to the virtual and reality conversation. That is, I think, one of the things we as an industry, not only in Africa, but certainly perhaps across the world, have been perhaps a little remiss in the virtual arena. But I think this platform has given us a bit of a wake-up call and said, hey, there is this other medium that's working in parallel. But again, I've said before, and I'll share again with the table, the audience, is that I found some research that said that 1 hour of face-to-face meetings is worth something like 5 video calls, 10 phone calls, and 20 emails. And again, coming back to what Corne and I think Frank were also saying, is that the face-to-face meeting will always be the meritorious one. It's the one where, the conversation is great, but you cannot replicate the looking at each other in the eye, the body language, the good stuff that makes and builds solid relationships that will take the industry forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm just so sorry that Zimbabwe Tourism Authority could not make it on the call. They were ready, but probably struggled to dial in. They do not have a formal convention bureau yet, but they have a division dedicated to MICE development, and they've suddenly, from September last year, they've been guns blazing and attending all the right shows and asking all the right questions, bringing the right people on board. So
yes,
I think, sorry, Kojo, did you?
No, I wanted to ask a question and chip in, if you may allow.
Yes, please. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so from the media side, I think that there's a lot of things that we can do, and we can be able to communicate with our constituency, because often than not, tourism generally, which MICE is part of it, is not very in the popular press, and the knowledge of it is very limited. But also in crisis situations like this, you sometimes need the journals and people like ourselves who do dedicated or specific journalism that can be able to educate the core members. Okay, because then you see that anything you carry to popular press doesn't work. I mean, that's a fact, because every word, every text that you see in TV, radio, online is about coronavirus. The only thing that people will talk about is about the negativity, about how it's impacting MICE, etc. So I believe that in this crisis, you can always make it also a good opportunity to be able to build knowledge base for people, okay, for the media or for your stakeholders that you believe that they need to know some of the things, because people take MICE business events in colloquial, but not understanding few things that works with it. Now, typically, if you also come to different African countries, what I've realized is the fact that there are different regulations and laws that works within either the MICE or tourism sectors. And so there's a need for us to be able to benchmark, and people who've started already, like I said earlier, will give us the opportunity for us to know and be able to study things. Because whether you like it or yes, any country that organizes events, be it a business event or something, there's some level of training for PCOs and stuff that they need to know. So I'm thinking that with all the depth of knowledge that we have here right now, especially with MICE and all of that, it will be good for you to be able to be giving us, I say us, because I'm in this, as a media, specific information, news, or features, or things that can help to educate. Because often than not, I know we are busy with all the things, if not for Corona, okay? And there are things that people still would like to know how to set up convention bureau. What is it that it is? I mean, what are the key metrics for PCOs? And I mean, you never know who may take an interest in that, because we are often seen as an ancillary or something that afterthought. So just to say that, and if there are things that we can be able to write or talk about, why not? That's just my opinion. Because the popular press will never hit on that. They'll just come when there's a supposedly big numbers or there's negativity.
No, sure. Thank you for that, Kojo. In fact, I did send you a link to the free MICE training that site is offering at the moment. I'll resend that to you, and I'll also give you an update of other online training that is available at the moment, and that we certainly can share with the entire sector across the continent. Connectivity is the main thing that we need. But I see we are slowly but surely running out of time. So Frank, I'd like to bounce over to you for some final observations and remarks, and then I'll just go around the room and then close off. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tessie. I think I keep on saying this, we need really to have these platforms to keep on engaging with each other and also keep on, giving hope to our industry. As you know, from the convention perspective, we're seen as the drivers for our industry. And so having these platforms and being able to engage our industry, our trade, our potential partners, our current partners, is something that is important for us to keep on doing while we're still under the lockdown. I think from Jacinta's point and also what Rick mentioned, we're seeing a lot of innovation coming out of this challenge. We're seeing countries coming up with homegrown solutions to serve the current needs, whether it's simple things like, shortage of masks and things that are being currently used in the medical, in the hospitals and the different places that we need to help and prevent the COVID. So we're seeing a lot of innovation coming up, and I think that's a lesson we're picking from here. But beyond that, I think it's also an opportunity for us to, rethink and plan ahead, because you've got ample time. You're able to research. You're able to see, how can I do my work better? How can I connect? Where can I do? Where can I move forward with a clear focus? And for me, this lockdown has given us, it's a challenge, but it also has given us an opportunity to come out with innovations and the creativity that is really going to improve Africa. And moving forward, I think let's keep on, giving confidence to our industry. For sure, we don't know when this will end, but the truth is it will end. And when it ends, we need to go out strong, and we need to bounce back as the industry. We all feel that we know, specifically, I think we also talked about it. In East Africa, tourism is a key pillar. And any developing country at this stage will need tourism to grow their receipts, will need tourism to grow investment to, and create impact to the bigger economy in respective countries. And so really, for the countries that have not really put much consideration for having convention bureaus, this is the time. We know tourism is going to be an important pillar in growing our economies.
Brilliant. Frank, thank you for that. And in fact, if I can just touch on a call I had yesterday, prompted by a different webinar last week. We just called it the SME Collaboration Forum. And we had a good mix of guest house owners, B&Bs, restaurants, DMCs, PCOs. And it's incredible what people have come up with, and not just in terms of collaboration, but innovation. I mean, a guest house turned, like a quarantine area, because they happen to be next to a hospital near Cape Town. So that lady identified those opportunities, and she's managing to stay alive throughout this crisis. So with that, Jacinta, do you have any parting words for us, please?
Thank you. To add on to what Frank said, I think as we use this time to really further interrogate what ideas or innovations could be adopted moving forward, we have a role to really encourage our industry to look at this and utilize any opportunity that comes around to innovate and be able to provide any solutions. We are seeing manufacturers turning into some medical engineering innovations and things like that, in their own small way, be able to even offer tents for you, for all these hospitals that are being set up in the fields, in the stadium, and be able to provide the profession of organizing events, to manage how the flow of things happen within the health sector, because there's need for that proper coordination of, because they're overwhelmed with numbers, they're overwhelmed with the situation. The other key thing, of course, is for us to keep talking to them and be able to also start thinking about what is this new checklist that, that delegates will be looking at in order to say, yes, I will go to this event. Who should come up with that? It is us. We need to start, working on that for our destinations, and we can collaborate as a region and say, health is going to be more important. So what are delegates of tomorrow going to be looking at? Will they be looking at what sort of exit clauses? How do we work on our contracting? How do we work on working, or how do we work on cancellation policies and things that will make it easier for us to be more flexible moving that period? So that is definitely what we need to also engage ourselves with, because definitely we will meet again.
Fantastic. Jacinta, thank you so much for joining us as well. So, Corne, let's hear from you. And then I'd like to maybe have Rick close this for us, unless Kojo, you have something to add. But first, across to Corne, please.
Thanks, Tess. I'm really enjoying this discussion. It also is a confirmation of why I'm still in the sector, and I believe in everything. And I think I made a few notes, and we've all said it, but I think our industry is well known for being resilient, and I think that's a trait of tourism and business events that's it's going to stay. Building confidence, Kojo, you mentioned it, Jacinta mentioned it, Frank, and I think this is the time, this is opportunity for us to build confidence in governments, to let them know value, we said it before, and also among our meeting planners, to actually make sure that we tool them or give tools to them to know that they should still continue with their efforts of putting meetings together in whatever format. I think our sector might be a little bit tarnished because of this whole thing about social distancing and the virus things, and maybe people are going to be afraid to actually suggest to meet. So it's up to us to actually build that confidence, Kojo, using the media to actually say why meetings are important in whatever way we meet. And we also need to take care of our stakeholders, not only ourselves, but I think our clients. We need to help our clients to know that we are there for them, to help them through this phase. And I see this this is an inspiring kind of journey to not forget them, or not create the perception that we need them only for the money. We need them for the bigger picture. And then the last thing, again, I'm just thinking about adding value to our own bureau, adding value to us as a continent. And Frank, you and I have been, for instance, for the last 2-3 meetings, Africa, we've been saying, let's do something together, blah, blah, but now's the time. So we can absolutely sit down with our stakeholders on the continent, start building cross-collaborative marketing opportunities. We know so little about each other's destinations. It's scary. And we have such a great offering in Africa for incentive, for meetings, for innovation. And I mean, just the fact that we have so much investment and investors interested in Africa shows us that the value is there, and we need to meet, we need to do that face to face, to have and to continue on that. And I see a role for us to actually be aggressive on the continent. Again, Europe and the models of Europe and the USA has been, they look after themselves, and that's how they started their meeting sector. Europe stays within Europe, and US stays within US, and this is time for us to stay in Africa and just use the continent and mobilize it with ourselves.
Indeed, thanks, Corne. Maybe you should just take another moment and touch on what was shared yesterday during a call, with a massive 10,000 delegate event that was cancelled for December without any consultation with the destination. That includes the Convention Bureau and the actual PCOs who were heading up this thing. So what would your advice be to the other bureaus?
No, I think our learning here, and it actually had to do with one of the world's biggest conferences. It's a 3-year conference, and it's one of the largest in the world. And every destination is happy to have it because of all sorts of impact. And they decided to not cancel or not postpone, but take the entire event virtual. So as a destination, we're not able to have direct economic impact from the tourism side. We're also not sure that how is that conference then going to look into legacy and what are the decisions, and that it was completely done without consultation, to your point, Tess, to the destination. And the learning there is that thing about your stakeholders, keeping them close, sometimes the decisions are not with us. We can try as much as you can to influence it. But this decision was there, then what else do you offer as a destination to those event planners who are set in taking a conference away from a physical meeting? And then the whole concept of understanding hybrid events and what that could mean, and the sizing of events and a hybrid versus a virtual event. But the big learning there was that if you've got a whiff of your events that you think will still take place, keep your clients, keep them, have confidence and keep them close to each other so that you can still have a direct economic impact from it. So yeah, that was a big learning. We're not quite sure if there was anything we could have done to influence the decision, but the learning there is that you could possibly have some value add as a destination to your conference so that they can return in some way. Yeah, so we're still battling with that idea because the conference was going to be in June, so it's around the corner. And we just right now, as a bureau and as a destination of the country, we're looking into how do we use that virtual space to then carry a message, a destination message, and then how do we mobilize the legacy element of that conference and still use that. So that's the quick learning.
Thanks. Thank you, Corne. So we are just about out of time. Anything from you, Kojo, before I hand over to Rick?
No, I think I'll just reemphasize the point that it's a moment that if we have some time and we have some literature and some features, we are able to use that to educate people about the importance of mines, and not necessarily just the importance, but what are the things that we can be able to tell our core constituency in terms of our target audience about the importance of that. So that's what I'm going to wrap up with.
Fabulous. Thank you so much again for joining us, Kojo. Rick, do you want to give us your parting words, please?
Yeah, thank you, Tess, and thank you to the team around the table. I think it's been a really enlightening conversation, and I think we also all kind of struggling with our own issues, whether it's Kenya, Rwanda, Cape Town. I mean, that is devastating, Corne. I mean, really. But I thought your insights and what you shared with the room was really incredible. You know, where and the whole thing about conferences and associations specifically is all about, as Corne was saying, it's that legacy, it's that knowledge, because knowledge is literally the new currency, isn't it, when it comes to power? And it's something that we as Africans are desperate to learn. And I love what Corne was saying. I mean, yeah, they're going to go online, but you know, I'm not sure that's going to be the absolute panacea, and whether the delegates are all going to glean as much as they could possibly do from the speakers, from the educational sessions. But the point is, how does what that conference would have left behind in Cape Town, South Africa, Southern Africa, East Africa, Africa? That's the lacuna. That's the missing key, isn't it? So yeah, that'll be really interesting to watch. But I still remain convinced that as we go down track, that real life will always be better than a digital life.
100%, 100%. Corne, did you put your hand up there?
Yes, I quickly wanted to say legacy.
Oh,
Just
that's it.
that conference was one on the legacy it was going to leave on this continent. And that is the sad thing. And the local
Okay.
association with the African
Okay.
population is so passionate for this conference. And that is the sad thing about
Which
it.
one? Okay. That's it.
Completely
In your text,
just wanted to add to that.
I think, yeah, two. I mean, missing the IA2, there's been some two other from you on the BTO side. And I think what I can vividly point out in terms of, is it the public or the one closed door like we did with Akwesienko? I think, okay.
Kojo, are you talking to us?
Goes on a phone call to his.
Kojo's on a phone call.
Oh.
No.
Another call.
No, hold on, you're saying something. Sorry.
No. Kojo.
No, yes, you see how this thing, yeah.
Okay, well, Mr. Agiman from Ghana Tourism has actually just called in. Is there a time difference on, was there a change in the time difference, Kojo? He just jumped out of his chair. Yes, well, okay,
No, Tess,
he's back.
You were asking me something?
No, Kojo, I think we crossed over there. I think Mr. Agiman from Ghana Tourism has just joined us. Hello there. Can you see us? Can you hear us?
Hi, Tess. Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry, I think the timing on my Zoom was wrong.
I'm afraid so, because we were actually about to end the call. But if everybody's okay, we're at another 5 minutes. I've recorded the call and I will send you the link. But I think while we've got you on the line, could you give us a quick overview with what's happening in Ghana with regard to mice and just the situation in general?
All right, thank you, and sorry for the confusion. For as far as we are concerned, it's back to the drawing board for us. Since COVID broke out, since the 12th of March, our government has banned public gathering. And so to that extent, every event, every meeting, every conference was canceled since that time. And clearly that has had a major impact on the industry, the mice industry, and the hospitality industry as a whole, and tourism. Everything is down. We also see that a lot of meetings are happening now online, digitally. And so the question that we keep asking ourselves is, post-COVID, how do we get people to business travel to start again? How do we get people to see that, yes, we can do it the digital way, but nothing matches attending some of these events, because a lot of the hotels depend on mice for survival. And if everything moves digitally, online, then how do we fill the gap? There will be some domestic mice events that will probably still happen to keep them afloat, but it's a big worry. We're working in numbers. We have set up a joint committee between the public sector here and the private sector, and tomorrow we'll be receiving their final report on ways that we can get out of this unscathed. But I don't think it's quite bleak, if I should put it that way.
Thank you so much for that. I think by the sounds of it, we all pretty much find ourselves in the same boat. Rick, did you perhaps have any more in-depth questions towards Kwasi at this stage?
No, not at all. I just wanted to underline that last key relevant point that Corne put on the table, Tess, in terms of the legacy. That, you know, it's the legacy, it's that knowledge transferring, it's what we leave behind, not just 10,000 delegates in Cape Town for 4 or 5 days. It's that long tail that is absolutely fundamental and crucial.
Right. And just to recap,
are there any?
Sorry, carry on.
All right. So in terms of that legacy, if you can just explain it a bit for me, please. Long tail bit that we mentioned, it broke off.
Yes. Rick, would you mind repeating, please? Just explain what the legacy is about.
I'll make it as brief as possible. Yeah, so that's really one of the purposes of the MICE sector, specifically the association sector, is that a destination will bid for a certain, might be pharmaceutical, it might be medical, it might be tourism, it might be whatever the pillar is. And part and parcel of the ROI is sharing that international knowledge via speakers of international repute that talk to the local marketplace. That, you know, I always say that all boats rise in a rising tide. So you take international best practices, international best speakers, immerse it through a conference in a certain destination, and it's like throwing a pebble into the pond. The legacy, the learning, the knowledge that is shared far and wide is ultimately very, very important. We talk about purposeful meetings and legacies. These are some of the intricacies, part and parcel of the DNA that associations leave behind in a destination. So it's not really just about the volume, the value. It's the long tail. It's all the other excellent stuff that the MICE sector brings to a city, a province, a country, a region, and a continent.
Thank you, Rick. Just to conclude, and especially for you, Kwasi, who's joined us a few minutes ago, during our discussions over the past few weeks, the golden thread of these discussions are looking towards developing intra-Africa travel. As you know, that's how ATLF started and what we're working towards. And looking at the potential demise of airlines, especially South African Airways, we need to look at opportunities for other African airlines to step in and potentially fill those shoes, get governments to agree, open up the airways, open up borders, relax visas, especially I know how tough South Africa can be on those visas. So we've got a lot of lobbying to do. And if we can find opportunities amongst ourselves to talk to our governments and then pay that forward to make Africa work as one continent rather than fighting each other all the time for their spot in the sunlight, I think that's kind of the end game. Okay, I don't have anything else from my side to say. Kwasi, I'm sorry we missed you for the best part of the conversation, but as I said, I will forward the recording to you and you can listen to it in your own time, and please redirect to any of us with questions or suggestions, whatever it might be. And on that note, thank you to everybody for taking the time. I think it was a very insightful discussion. A lot of work to do, but at least there's still some positive thoughts that are coming out and a lot of proactive action, which I think is fantastic. Well done, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tessie. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We will meet again.
We shall.
We
will
meet
meet
again.
again.
We'll meet
For
again.
Thank
sure.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Cheers.
Hey,
Thank
Jackie,
you.
how are
Bye,
you?
everybody.
Nice to see you, Kwasi.
Yeah. Good to see